Hello from the Dukascopy TV studio in Geneva. We're talking about the question, is there a change of leadership in world markets, with Patrizio Merciai. He is Chief Strategist from GONET CIE. Welcome to the studio,
Thank you.
Mr. Merciai.
Thank you.
So this year has been very gratifying for investors. You are expecting a change in this outlook or in the market outlooks. Is there a change of leadership coming up?
Yeah, a change certainly in the drivers of the market. You know, in recent months, most assets have been really boosted by the strong dollar, weak euro. This has been very supportive of bond markets in Europe, has been very supportive of equities, especially in the Eurozone. So all this has been very good for most investments. But now we are seeing lots of things happening. And for instance, if we watch the Forex market, everyone is expecting, for instance, the euro to continue to weaken, the dollar to continue rising, but actually it's not happening. And so maybe all this kind of virtuous circle between the dollar or euro-dollar parity and the spreads in bond yields and, you know, the upward revision in corporate earnings for equities, all this virtuous circle is starting a bit to slow down. So what does it mean for us? For us, I mean, we really want to adjust to, let's say, a less benign outlook. And this less benign would be probably signaled by a turning point for the dollar versus all currencies and ultimately versus the euro.
So we also have here the corresponding slides, the Eurozone equities. So what currencies, what world economies are you watching most closely these days?
Well, you know, so far markets have been very much driven by anticipations of tightening by the Fed, the putting in place a Euro QE from the ECB. But now I would say the consensus in the market is very much expecting another round of QE from Japan. The economy has been rather weak. And so there is a lot of talk about boosting again the size of quantitative easing in Japan. Now, the question is, you know, last October, the Bank of Japan almost doubled the size of QE with the hope, with the intent of weakening the yen. It just hasn't worked. You know, there's a kind of diminishing returns for QEs. The more money you inject into the system, apparently it looks like it's not working anymore as far as Japan is concerned. So I would say there's a kind of optimistic consensus saying, okay, the BOJ will do more, and this will weaken the yen, this will boost the dollar up, and here we go again. I'm not quite convinced that this will happen. So that's what we are really watching. And you know, this, for instance, is interesting because, you know, QE in Japan is very unique in that they are buying also foreign assets. Actually, they are buying much more assets than what the Japanese government is issuing. So all this, obviously, with a clear intent of weakening the yen. But once again, it has not worked. So even though they would steepen up the size once more of QE, maybe the market is telling us something different. It's telling us, okay, the yen has found a level. The dollar has found a level. The dollar has had a very nice, impressive, quick rise. But, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe, you know, after 20% or something, this is the dollar index, 20% rise in 6 months, which is one of the quickest and steepest upward moves in the dollar since the 80s, maybe that's it, you know. It is consolidating. I mean, the jury is out, whether it will break out or whether it will do a kind of rounded top. But I would say there are many signs that the momentum, the upward momentum, has been diminishing and maybe has disappeared.
So in the next slide, you really answer the question how a change of leadership in this world markets could look like, and also what would be the strategic proposals for investors.
Yeah, okay, so you see, obviously, with a very nice 3-4 months that we had, a lot of assets are still very much maybe fundamentally positive, but overbought. So what we have been doing very recently, in those very recent days, has been to start taking profits on dollar exposure, currency, also to be more cautious about everything that is linked to the euro yield levels, the spread markets in Europe, for instance, Italian bonds, Spanish bonds, and so on, which are very expensive compared to history. And also to start looking at within all those, especially Eurozone big blue chips, which have been boosted by the euro-dollar rate, to start maybe take a hard look at them and see where we could take profit. You know, everything which has been kind of dollar plays, so to speak. And then conversely, I think what we are really looking at today for this kind of transition is really, okay, the US, everyone was expecting the US to be dragged down by the strong dollar. We are not really seeing it. I mean, the economy has been slowing, but this has not been very bad. And obviously, the earnings outlook for US companies is still very strong. So maybe the US equities would stop underperforming the Eurozone and Japan. So we are looking again at the US, but we are not negative on Europe, for instance. Europe, obviously, the European economy has been recovering, but to play the European economy, the European recovery, we have to look at mid-caps. We have to look at companies which are much more domestic or regional instead of just big multinationals. And obviously also Asia is a growth zone. You know, currencies there have been very strong, which has been good for the local bond markets, for instance. So we are not negative as far as markets or investments as a whole are concerned, but we are trying to position ourselves for this kind of shift from a weak euro, strong dollar play to something much more diverse with maybe more regional focus.
And final question, what time frame, what time perspective are we talking about in this change of this regime?
Well, it could happen in the next weeks, you know. As I mentioned, we have already taken a few measures. We have taken profits on some assets. We are started buying. I mean, if you have in mind the dollar index, the price of the dollar index, we are really, at a turning point. Whether the dollar will break out on the upside or whether it will start weakening would be probably the trigger for that. And this can happen really within the next days or weeks.
Patrizio Merciai from GONET here in Geneva, thank you very much for being here and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. You're most welcome. Thank you.
And thanks for watching. Do make sure to keep clicking back on the Dukascopy TV website for latest updates and interviews. Have a great day and see you next time.